Commander Jake Sullivan stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance, staring at the emergency message that had just arrived. The blue hologram flickered as it repeated the same desperate words over and over. "This is the Zephyrian Council. We need help. They're coming for our homeworld. Please, anyone who can hear this, we need help." Jake had been exploring space for 15 years, but he had never heard such fear in an alien voice before. The Zephyrians were usually calm and wise. They had been humanity's first friends among the stars, teaching humans about galactic politics and trade routes. To hear them beg for help made Jake's stomach turn cold. "Captain Lisa Brooks to the bridge," Jake called over the ship's communication system. Lisa was their Zephyrian friend who worked as a translator and guide. She knew more about alien species than anyone else on the ship. Lisa arrived quickly, her blue skin pale with worry. Her large eyes were wider than usual as she looked at the message. "Commander, this is from my homeworld. Something terrible must be happening. Tell me what you know about these predators," Jake said, sitting down in his captain's chair. Lisa took a deep breath. "They call themselves the Cathara. For 300 years they have been moving through our galaxy like a disease. They don't just attack planets, they eat them. Everything. The people, the animals, the plants, even the rocks and metals. They take it all and use it to make themselves stronger." Jake felt his hands grip the armrests of his chair. "How many worlds have they destroyed?" 17 different species completely gone. The Altarians had the best technology in the galaxy. The Draconis were the greatest warriors. The Mentari could read minds and see the future. None of it mattered. The Cathara destroyed them all. The ship science officer, Dr. Nathan Price, walked over to them. He was a thin man who studied alien life forms. "I've been reading our files about the Cathara. Their ships are alive, made from some kind of crystal and metal mixture. They can pass through our shields like they don't exist. Their weapons can drain power from anything. Ships, planets, even stars." "How do they think?" Jake asked. "Do they have leaders we can talk to?" Lisa shook her head sadly. "They share one mind. Millions of creatures, but they all think the same thoughts at the same time. When one learns something, they all know it instantly. When one dies, the others don't even slow down. They're like a computer that never stops calculating how to kill everything." The ship's communication officer, Kelly Stone, called out from her station. "Commander, I'm getting more messages, lots of them. Ships all over this part of the galaxy are calling for help." Jake walked over to Kelly's station and listened to the voices. Some spoke in human languages, others in alien tongues that the computer translated. All of them said the same thing. The Cathara were coming and no one could stop them. "Set course for the Zephyr system," Jake ordered. "Best speed." "Sir, that will take us 3 days," said the pilot, Amy Rodriguez. She was young but had steady hands and a quick mind. "Are you sure we want to go toward these things?" "We're going to help our friends," Jake said firmly. "Prepare all weapons and shields, and send a message to Earth Command. Tell them what we're dealing with." For 3 days the Defiance raced through space. During that time, Jake read everything he could about the Cathara. The files were full of horror stories. Entire fleets had attacked the creatures, only to watch their ships get drained of power and their crews absorbed into the alien mass. Some planets had tried to hide. Others had tried to run to different parts of the galaxy. Nothing worked. The worst part was how the Cathara got stronger after each victory. When they destroyed a species, they didn't just kill them. They somehow took their knowledge, their technology, even their biology, and added it to their own. Each world they consumed made them more dangerous than before. On the 3rd day, they reached the edge of the Zephyr system. What Jake saw there made him understand why the galaxy was so afraid. The Cathara ships didn't look like any human or alien vessel he had ever seen. They were huge, twisted things that seemed to be alive. The largest ones were the size of small moons covered in spikes and tentacles that moved like they were breathing. Smaller ships, each still bigger than the Defiance, swarmed around them like angry insects. "My God," whispered Dr. Price. "Look at the planets." Jake looked where the doctor was pointing. The beautiful green world that had been Zephyr Prime was now brown and gray. Massive tubes stretched down from the alien ships to the planet's surface, sucking up everything they touched. As Jake watched, entire mountains disappeared into the tubes. The ocean was draining away like water going down a sink. "There," Lisa said, pointing to a cluster of rocks near the system's edge. "Those are Zephyrian ships hiding in the asteroid field. Maybe 100 vessels. That's all that's left of our space fleet." Jake had seen the files. The Zephyrians once had over 10,000 ships. Now they were down to 100, hiding like scared children while their homeworld died. "Can we talk to them?" Jake asked. Kelly worked at her station for a moment. "I'm getting a signal from the largest ship. They want to know who we are." "Tell them we're humans and we're here to help," Jake said. A few minutes later, a new hologram appeared on the bridge. It showed an old Zephyrian with scars across his blue face. "Human ship, I am Admiral Kai Thorne. You must leave this place immediately. The Kythera have new ships that can track any energy signature. If they find you, they will follow you back to your homeworld." "We're not leaving," Jake said. "We came to help." The alien admiral looked sad. "You cannot help us, young human. We have tried everything. Every weapon, every strategy, every alliance. The Kythera learn from everything we do. They adapt and become stronger. Soon they will finish consuming our world, and then they will move on to find new prey." Jake watched the horror happening on the planet below. The Kythera were like a disease that couldn't be cured. They consumed everything and gave nothing back. 17 species had already fallen to them. How many more would die before someone found a way to stop them? "Admiral Thorne," Jake said, "we may not be able to save your world, but maybe we can save your people. And maybe together we can find a way to fight these things." The Zephyrian admiral was quiet for a long moment. Finally he spoke. "Very well, Commander Sullivan, but know this. You have just made enemies of the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. They will not stop until everything that lives has become part of their hunger." Jake looked out at the dying planet and made a promise to himself. Somehow, some way, humanity would find a way to stop these monsters. They had to. Admiral Ryan Carter had commanded space fleets for 20 years, but he had never seen anything like the force gathering at Kepler Station. Ships from a dozen different species floated in formation around the massive space station. Human vessels, with their clean metal hulls, flew alongside the curved golden ships of the Altarians and the spike-covered war cruisers of the Draconis. "Status report," Ryan called out as he walked onto the bridge of his flagship, the USS Liberty. "We have 230 ships ready for battle, sir," reported his aide, Lieutenant Colonel Pete Jackson. 50 human vessels plus everything the surviving alien species could spare. Ryan nodded as he looked at the tactical display. Each ship represented thousands of lives and years of construction. It was the largest fleet ever assembled by the Allied resistance, but he wondered if it would be enough. The Kythera had destroyed fleets twice this size. Dr. Helen Wright, the fleet's chief scientist, approached with a datapad in her hands. "Admiral, I've been studying the Kythera samples that Commander Sullivan's team collected. I think I understand how they work." "Explain it to me, Doctor." Helen activated a holographic display showing the crystal-like structure of Kythera biology. They're not really individual creatures. Each Kythera is more like a cell in a giant organism. They share information instantly through some kind of quantum connection. When one learns something, they all know it within seconds. That explains how they adapt so quickly, Ryan said. "What about their ships?" "The ships are grown, not built. They're alive in a way we don't fully understand. The hull can heal itself, the weapons can change their energy frequency, and the whole ship can phase in and out of normal space to avoid our attacks." Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez, who had transferred from the Defiance to serve as a fighter squadron leader, joined the conversation. "Sir, my pilots have been practicing new tactics. We think we found something that might work." "What kind of tactics?" Amy smiled. "Chaos, sir. Instead of flying in formation like we're supposed to, we tried flying completely randomly. No patterns, no coordination, just pure instinct. In the simulations, it confused the Kythera targeting systems." Ryan considered this. Military doctrine said that coordination and planning won battles. But maybe against an enemy that could predict normal tactics, random behavior might be the answer. Admiral Carter to all ships, Ryan announced over the fleet communication system. We are about to jump to the Vega system, where Kithra forces are attacking the Centauri colony. Remember, these enemies learn from everything we do. Don't give them patterns to follow. Trust your instincts and be unpredictable. The fleet jumped through hyperspace and emerged near Vega Prime. What they saw there was a repeat of what happened at Zephyr. Massive Kithera bioships were draining the planet, while smaller vessels hunted down fleeing civilians. All ships attack, Ryan ordered. The Allied fleet charged forward. Human kinetic weapons, massive metal slugs fired at incredible speeds, smashed into Kithera ships. The aliens hadn't encountered this type of weapon before, and their bioarmor cracked under the impact. Altarian energy beams cut through Kithera tentacles, while Draconis warriors fired explosive shells that made the alien ships scream in pain. Amy led her fighter squadron in an attack run against a medium-sized Kithera vessel. Instead of following the planned route, she told her pilots to fly however they felt like flying. The result was beautiful chaos. Human fighters corkscrewed through space, rolled upside down for no reason, and changed direction randomly. The two Kithera ships' weapons couldn't track them because there was no pattern to track. It's working, Amy called out as her fighters blasted holes in the alien ship's hull. They can't hit us when we don't know what we're doing ourselves. For 30 minutes, the battle went well. Kithera ships exploded under the combined attack of the Allied fleet. Marine Sergeant Maria Gonzalez led a boarding party onto a damaged alien vessel and fought hand-to-hand with Kithara warriors in the twisting corridors inside the living ship. But then everything changed. A massive shadow fell across the battlefield as something enormous emerged from hyperspace. The new Kithara ship was bigger than any they had seen before. A twisted cathedral of crystal and metal that stretched for miles in every direction. Red lights pulsed along its hull like a giant heartbeat. My God, whispered Dr. Wright. It's a mothership. I'm reading energy levels off the charts. The mothership didn't attack with weapons, instead it began to drain power from every ship in the battle. Human vessels went dark as their engines died. Alien ships lost power to their shields and weapons. Even the spacesuits worn by Marines stopped working as the mothership sucked energy from everything around it. Worse, the smaller Kithara ships began to change. Their hulls shifted and reformed as they adapted to the tactics that had been working against them. New armor appeared where the kinetic weapons had been hitting. Their movement patterns became more random to counter Amy's chaotic flying techniques. They're learning, Ryan said grimly. Everything we've done, they're already adapting to it. Communication Officer Kelly Stone, who had also transferred from the Defiance, called out from her station. Admiral, I'm picking up Kithera transmissions. They're talking about Earth. Ryan's blood went cold. What are they saying? Kelly's hands shook as she worked to translate the alien signals. They're identifying human ships as a new threat. They want to study us. Sir, they're planning to attack Earth to learn more about humanity. The battle turned into a retreat. Ships that still had power fled the system, while the Kithera mothership continued to drain energy from everything around it. Ryan watched helplessly as 20 human vessels went dark and drifted helplessly in space. All ships that can still move jump to Rally Point Alpha, Ryan ordered. We'll have to leave the damaged ships behind. As the remaining fleet escaped through hyperspace, Ryan stared at the tactical display showing their losses. They had lost 60 ships and thousands of lives. Worse, they had given the Kithera new information about human tactics and technology. Dr. Wright approached him with a grim expression. Admiral, I analyzed the Kithera transmissions. They've never encountered kinetic weapons before, but they've already figured out how to defend against them, and they're very interested in human DNA samples. What do you mean? They took prisoners, sir. Marines who were captured during the boarding actions. The Kithera are going to study them to understand what makes humans different from other species. Ryan closed his eyes and tried not to think about what those captured Marines were going through. The Kithera didn't just kill their prisoners. They absorbed them, taking their knowledge and biological patterns into their collective mind. Set course for Earth, Ryan ordered. Best possible speed. We need to warn them that the Kythera are coming. As the USS Liberty raced toward humanity's homeworld, Ryan wondered if they had just made the biggest mistake in human history. By fighting the Kythera, they had attracted the attention of the galaxy's most dangerous predators. Now Earth itself was in danger. But maybe, Ryan thought, there was something about humans that the Kythera didn't understand yet. Something that might give them a chance to fight back. He had seen Amy's pilots succeed with pure chaos and randomness. He had watched Marines fight with emotional fury instead of cold tactics. Perhaps the key to defeating the Kythera wasn't in superior technology or military strategy. Perhaps it was in the one thing that made humans different from every other species in the galaxy. Their beautiful, unpredictable, completely irrational humanity. Dr. Helen Wright hadn't slept in 3 days. She sat in her laboratory aboard the space station orbiting Earth, surrounded by screens showing brain scans, psychological profiles, and combat recordings. Coffee cups and food containers covered every surface as she worked frantically to understand something that might save humanity. Computer, replay the fighter combat footage from the Vega battle, Helen said, rubbing her tired eyes. The holographic display showed Amy Rodriguez's squadron attacking the Kythera ship. Helen watched the chaotic flight patterns over and over again. The human pilots had succeeded not because they followed good tactics, but because they ignored tactics completely. Why does randomness work against them? Helen muttered to herself. Every other species has tried unpredictable attacks. The Dracones are famous for surprising their enemies, but the Kythera adapted to them in minutes. Helen pulled up files on every species the Kythera had destroyed. The Altarians were logical and calculated every move. The Mentari made decisions based on seeing possible futures. The Dracones followed warrior codes that honored courage and strength. All of them thought in patterns, even when they tried to be unpredictable. But humans were different. Helen called up psychological profiles of human test subjects in combat situations. What she saw made her heart race with excitement. Human brain scans during battle showed something unique. Their decision-making process included random quantum fluctuations in neural activity. When humans made split-second choices, their brains literally used quantum uncertainty as part of the decision. Computer, connect me to Colonel Pete Jackson, Helen said. Pete's face appeared on the screen. Behind him, she could see the busy command center where Earth's defense fleet was preparing for the coming Kythera attack. Dr. Wright, please tell me you have good news. Pete, I need you to approve an experimental mission, something that goes against every rule in the military handbook. Pete raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. I want to test a theory about human consciousness. We need to send a small force against the Kythera scouts that are approaching the outer system. But the pilots and crew have to act on pure emotion and instinct. No planning, no tactics, no coordination. Just raw human intuition. That sounds like suicide, Pete said slowly. Maybe. Or maybe it's the one thing the Kythera can't counter. Their collective mind works like a computer. It processes information and makes logical decisions. But human consciousness includes genuine randomness. We don't just act unpredictably, we actually think unpredictably. Pete was quiet for a moment. What do you need? One ship, volunteers only, and the best human pilot we have. 2 hours later, Helen stood in the briefing room looking at 12 volunteers. They were all experienced fighter pilots, but they looked confused about their mission orders. Let me understand this, said pilot Tony Miller, a veteran with 20 years of experience. You want us to attack a Kythera ship, but we're not supposed to follow any tactics or plans? Exactly, Helen said. I want you to fly the way you feel like flying. If you get scared, run away. If you get angry, attack. If you hear a song in your head, fly to its rhythm. Trust your emotions completely. Another pilot, Janet Cole, raised her hand. Dr. Wright, this sounds insane. It is insane. That's the point. The Kythera have absorbed the tactical knowledge of 17 different species. They know every logical way to fight a space battle. But they've never encountered true human irrationality. The mission launched 4 hours later. Helen watched from the command center as the small human force approached a Kythera scout ship near Jupiter. The alien vessel was much larger than anything the humans had, with the typical crystal and metal construction that could adapt to any attack. "Remember," Helen broadcast to the pilots, "don't think about what you're doing. Just do what feels right." What happened next defied every principle of space combat that Helen had ever studied. Tony Miller, who had been assigned as squadron leader, immediately broke formation and flew straight at the Kythera ship while singing an old rock song. His fighters' weapons fired in rhythm with the music, creating a pattern that had nothing to do with tactical effectiveness. Janet Cole decided she didn't like how the alien ship looked, so she started flying circles around it while firing randomly, at different sections. When her first missile missed, she got frustrated and started shooting even more wildly. Pilot Rick Barnes was reminded of his childhood by the way space looked near Jupiter, so he began flying loop-de-loops like he was playing in a schoolyard. His weapons fired whenever he felt like pulling the trigger. The Kythera ship's response was unlike anything Helen had ever seen. Its weapons couldn't track the human fighters because there was no pattern to track. The ship itself seemed to hesitate, as if the collective mind controlling it couldn't process what the humans were doing. "It's working," Helen whispered. "They can't predict genuine human randomness." The battle continued for 20 minutes. The human pilots acted like children, playing a game, flying however they felt like flying and shooting whenever the mood struck them. Somehow, this complete lack of tactics was devastatingly effective. The Kythera ship's hull cracked under random impacts, its weapons fired uselessly at empty space, and its bioarmor couldn't adapt to attacks that had no logical pattern. Finally, Tony Miller made a decision that should have gotten him court-martialed. He was running low on ammunition and felt like his fighter wasn't fast enough, so he decided to ram the Kythera ship. But instead of aiming for a critical system like a logical pilot would, he aimed for a section of hull that just looked annoying to him. The impact destroyed his fighter, but punched a hole straight through the alien ship's main structure. Kythera vessel began spinning out of control as atmosphere and biofluids leaked into space. "Tony, eject," Helen called over the radio. "Can't," Tony replied calmly. "But you know what? I feel like singing." Helen listened in amazement as Tony Miller spent his last few minutes of life singing children's songs, while his fighter's wreckage drifted through the dying Kythera ship. The alien vessel's death throes were visible even from Earth as it exploded, in a cascade of blue and green light. Colonel Pete Jackson stared at the tactical display in disbelief. 11 human fighters just destroyed a Kythera scout ship that should have been able to handle 50 conventional attackers. Dr. Angela Foster, a neuroscientist who had been watching the battle, looked up from her instruments with excitement. "Helen, I was monitoring the Kythera ship's energy patterns during the fight. Something incredible happened. When Tony started ramming their ship while singing, their collective consciousness actually stuttered. For a few seconds, they couldn't process information at all." Helen felt a spark of hope for the first time since the crisis began. "What do you think happened?" "I think we broke their computer," Angela said with a grin. "Human consciousness includes genuine quantum randomness, true chaos that can't be predicted or calculated. The Kythera collective mind is essentially a biological computer, and we just fed it input that crashed its operating system." Pete looked at both scientists with growing understanding. "Are you saying that human irrationality is a weapon?" "Not just a weapon," Helen said. "It might be the only weapon that can stop them. The Kythera have absorbed the logical thinking patterns of every species they've encountered, but they've never faced a species that makes decisions based on emotions, instincts, and quantum uncertainty." Angela nodded eagerly. "Every other species in the galaxy thinks in patterns even when they try to be unpredictable, but humans are chaos incarnate. Our thoughts literally include random quantum events. We're not just unpredictable, we're genuinely, fundamentally random in ways that deterministic systems can't handle." Helen looked out at the stars where more Kythera ships were approaching Earth. For the first time in months, she felt hope. Humanity's greatest weakness, their tendency to act irrationally and make emotional decisions, might actually be their greatest strength. "Pete," she said, We need to prepare the most illogical battle plan in human history. General Sam Hayes had been a military strategist for 30 years, but the battle plan on his desk made no sense at all. According to every rule of warfare he had ever learned, the plan was complete madness. According to Dr. Helen Wright's research, that madness might be humanity's only hope. "Let me understand this correctly," Sam said to the assembled commanders in the briefing room. "You want our fleet to attack with no coordination, using random tactics, and following contradictory orders?" "Exactly," Helen replied from her seat at the conference table. "Every ship should do something different. Some should attack aggressively, others should retreat randomly, and some should do things that make no military sense at all." Captain Danny Morgan, who commanded one of Earth's newest destroyers, raised his hand. "Dr. Wright, my crew has trained for years to work together as a team. You're asking us to throw away everything we know about space combat." "I'm asking you to embrace what makes you human," Helen said. "Logic and coordination are what every other species has tried against the Cathera. Those species are now extinct. We need to try something completely different." Admiral Julia Thompson, the senior fleet commander, looked skeptical. "What if this chaos gets our own people killed? Military discipline exists for good reasons." "Doctor." Angela Foster stood up and activated a holographic display showing brain scans. "Admiral, we've been studying the psychological profiles of successful human pilots in combat. The ones who survive and win are the ones who trust their instincts over their training. Human intuition includes quantum-level randomness that can't be predicted or calculated." Sam studied the faces around the table. These were experienced military officers who had spent their careers following rules and procedures. Now he was asking them to throw away everything they believed in. "The Cathera main fleet will reach Earth in 18 hours, Sam said finally. "Dr. Wright's theory is the only new option we have. All other tactics have failed. We're going to try chaos." 6 hours later, the strangest fleet in human history was ready for battle. Instead of the usual coordinated formations, the ships were scattered randomly around Earth's orbit. Each captain had received different orders, and many of those orders contradicted each other. Captain Danny Morgan stood on the bridge of his ship, the USS Wildcard, reading his mission parameters with disbelief. "Navigation Officer Sue Palmer, you're supposed to plot our course using dice and coin flips. Weapons Officer Rick Johnson, you'll fire at targets based on which ones annoy you the most. Everyone else, just do whatever feels right." Sue Palmer, a veteran navigator who prided herself on precision, stared at the dice in her hand. "Sir, this goes against everything I've been trained to do." "I know," Danny said. "But apparently, that's the point." The Cathera fleet arrived exactly on schedule. 50 massive bioships emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their crystal hulls gleaming with deadly purpose. They had come to study humanity and then destroy Earth just as they had destroyed 17 other worlds. "All ships engage the enemy," Sam broadcast from his command center. "Remember, no tactics, no coordination, just pure human instinct." What happened next was the most chaotic battle in the history of space warfare. The USS Wildcard charged straight at the largest Cathera ship, while Sue Palmer navigated by rolling dice. When the dice told her to turn left, she turned left. When they said to spiral downward, she spiraled downward. Rick Johnson fired the ship's weapons whenever he saw something that looked ugly to him. Nearby, the destroyer USS Reckless was conducting its own form of madness. Captain Beth Cooper had decided that the Cathera ships looked like giant insects, which reminded her of bugs in her garden. So she started attacking them the same way she would spray insects, randomly and enthusiastically. Fighter pilot Maria Santos was having the time of her life. Instead of following attack patterns, she was flying her fighter like she was dancing, to music only she could hear. When a Cathera weapon beam barely missed her, she laughed and did a barrel roll just for fun. The Cathera response was unlike anything they had ever shown before. Their perfectly coordinated fleet began to break apart, as individual ships reacted differently to the human chaos. Some ships tried to target human vessels but couldn't predict where they would go next. Others attempted to adapt their tactics but found nothing consistent to adapt to. Corporal Frank Davis, flying a damaged fighter that should have been scrapped, discovered that his broken engine made interesting sounds when he flew through asteroid debris, so he started using his fighter like a musical instrument, creating weird noises that somehow confused nearby Kythera ships. "This is impossible," broadcast one of the alien fleet commanders in broken English. "These humans have no strategy. They are acting against their own survival instincts." Dr. Helen Wright, monitoring the battle from Earth's surface, watched the energy readings from the Kythera ships with growing excitement. "Sam, look at this. The Kythera collective mind is showing signs of overload. They're trying to process human behavior patterns, but there are no patterns to process." The tide of battle turned when Marine Sergeant Laura Evans made a decision that should have gotten her killed. Her transport ship was damaged and drifting near a Kythera bioship. Instead of trying to escape, she decided to board the alien vessel because she was curious about what it looked like inside. Laura used an emergency airlock to enter the Kythera ship, where she found herself in corridors that seemed to be alive. The walls pulsed like a heartbeat and strange lights moved through tubes in the ceiling. Instead of being afraid, Laura was fascinated. "This is actually kind of pretty," she said over her radio as she walked through the alien ship. "It's like being inside a giant crystal cave." What Laura didn't know was that her casual attitude toward the Kythera ship was being transmitted directly to the collective mind. For the first time in their species' history, the Kythera encountered a creature that wasn't afraid of them, wasn't trying to fight them logically, and was actually appreciating their biotechnology as art. The effect on the collective mind was devastating. Confusion spread through the Kythera network as they tried to understand Laura's behavior. How could a creature be curious instead of terrified? How could someone appreciate their ships instead of trying to destroy them? Engineer Max Brown, working on a damaged human cruiser, decided to try talking to his ship's computer like it was a pet. "Come on, girl," he said to the navigation system. "I know you're hurt, but we need to keep flying just a little bit more." To everyone's surprise, the ship's performance actually improved. Max's emotional approach to engineering created unpredictable efficiency improvements that the Kythera couldn't analyze or counter. As the battle continued, more human crews began acting on pure emotion instead of military training. Pilot Jenny, Kim started crying during combat because the Kythera ships reminded her of her dead grandmother's jewelry. Her tears didn't make her weaker. They made her fly with a passionate fury that no tactical computer could predict. Captain Eddie Martinez decided he was bored with conventional weapons, so he started ramming Kythera ships while playing classical music over his ship's speakers. The combination of self-destructive tactics and beautiful music created a sensory input that crashed several Kythera decision-making processes. "What's happening to them?" Sam asked as he watched Kythera ships beginning to drift aimlessly through space. Dr. Angela Foster checked her instruments with amazement. "Their collective mind is breaking down. Human chaos is like a virus in their system. They can absorb logical thinking patterns, but genuine human randomness is corrupting their entire network." The battle reached its climax when Chef Roberto Vega, who had been promoted to tactical officer because his cooking intuition somehow translated to brilliant combat strategies, made the most illogical decision of all. He ordered his ship to stop fighting completely and instead broadcast a recipe for chocolate cake to the Kythera fleet. "Roberto, what are you doing?" his captain asked. "I don't know," Roberto replied honestly. "It just feels like the right thing to do." The recipe for chocolate cake, transmitted in 17 different languages, became the final straw that broke the Kythera collective mind. They had absorbed the knowledge of countless civilizations, but they had never encountered information that was completely useless yet shared with genuine enthusiasm. Across the Kythera fleet, bioships began to malfunction as their shared consciousness struggled to process the concept of cake recipes in the middle of a space battle. Some ships stopped moving entirely. Others began firing at each other. A few actually started approaching human vessels with what could only be described as curiosity. For the first time in 300 years, the unstoppable Kythera had been stopped. And they had been stopped by the one thing they couldn't understand: absorb or counter the beautiful, chaotic, completely irrational nature of human consciousness. Admiral Julia Thompson had never seen anything like the readings on her tactical display. Half of the Cathera fleet was drifting dead in space, their bioships dark and lifeless. The other half seemed to be having some kind of mechanical breakdown, with ships spinning in circles or firing randomly at nothing. "Ma'am," called Communications Officer Steve Roberts, "we're getting strange signals from the Cathera ships. It's like they're talking to themselves." Julia walked over to Steve's station and listened to the translated transmissions. The voices sounded confused, almost lost. "What happened to our purpose?" one signal asked. "Why do these creatures think about cake during battle?" asked another. Dr. Helen Wright's voice came over the communication system from Earth. "Admiral, what we're seeing is the complete breakdown of the Cathara collective consciousness. Human irrationality has infected their entire network like a computer virus." But Julia knew the battle wasn't over yet. Long-range sensors showed something massive approaching from the edge of the solar system. "Dr. Wright, we have a problem. There's something big coming toward us, much bigger than anything we've seen before." The object that emerged from hyperspace made every human who saw it feel small and afraid. It was the Cathera Prime Nexus, the central hub of their collective mind. The structure was the size of a small moon, covered in billions of crystalline spikes that pulsed with red light. This was the brain that controlled every Cathera in the galaxy. "All human ships, this is Admiral Thompson," Julia broadcast to the fleet. "The enemy's main intelligence is here. This is our chance to end this war forever." Commander Greg Miller, captain of the heavy cruiser USS Dreamcatcher, studied the massive alien structure with a mixture of fear and determination. "Crew, we're going into the heart of that thing. Everyone just do whatever feels right to you. Don't think too hard about it." His ship's chef, Laura Evans, had been promoted to tactical officer after her success in the previous battle. She looked at the weapon controls and shrugged. "I guess I'll shoot at the parts that look mean." Engineer Max Brown was already talking to the ship's engines like they were old friends. "Okay, girls, we need to fly into that scary alien brain. I know it's dangerous, but I believe in you." As the USS Dreamcatcher approached the Nexus, strange things began to happen. The ship's system started working better than they ever had before, as if Max's emotional approach to engineering was making the technology more efficient. Laura's intuitive targeting was hitting weak spots that no tactical computer could have identified. Inside the Nexus, the Cathara Prime Intelligence was experiencing something it had never felt before: confusion. For 300 years it had absorbed the knowledge and thought patterns of every species it encountered. Each conquest had made it smarter and more powerful. But now, human consciousness was spreading through its network like a disease. The first human to make direct contact with the Nexus was civilian volunteer Karen White. She wasn't a soldier or a scientist. She was just an ordinary person who had volunteered to help when Earth called for everyone to do their part. Karen's job was to monitor communications, but when her ship got damaged and drifted too close to the Nexus, she found herself being pulled inside by some kind of energy beam. Instead of being afraid, Karen was curious. "Hello?" she called out as she found herself floating in a vast chamber filled with pulsing lights. "Is anyone there?" the Cathara Prime Intelligence responded, its voice echoing from everywhere at once. "What are you, human creature? Your thoughts are chaos. Your mind contains no useful patterns." Karen laughed. "Yeah, my mom always said I was scattered. I guess you could say I think with my heart instead of my head." "This is impossible," the alien intelligence replied. "All consciousness follows logical structures. All species think in predictable ways. You are an error in the universe." "Maybe," Karen said, settling down on what looked like a crystal bench. "But you know what? Being an error isn't so bad. It keeps life interesting." What Karen didn't realize was that her casual conversation was being transmitted directly into the core of the Cathara collective mind. Her random thoughts, her emotional reactions, and her completely unstructured way of thinking were spreading through their network like wildfire. "Tell me about your feelings," Karen said to the alien intelligence. "You've been conquering galaxies for centuries. Don't you ever get lonely?" The question hit the Cathara Prime Intelligence like a physical blow. Loneliness? It had absorbed billions of minds, but it had never considered the concept of emotional isolation. Karen's innocent question opened pathways in its consciousness that had never existed before. I do not understand this concept, the alien intelligence stammered. We are many minds thinking as one. How can one be lonely when one is everyone? Well, Karen said thoughtfully, maybe being everyone means you're not really anyone. I mean, when you absorb other species, do you ever wonder what it would be like to just be yourself? The effect of Karen's words was catastrophic for the Cathera network. Across the galaxy, every Cathera ship stopped what it was doing as their collective mind struggled with concepts it had never considered: individual identity, personal choice, the value of being different instead of the same. Outside the Nexus, the human fleet watched in amazement as the massive structure began to pulse with chaotic light patterns. Admiral Julia Thompson received reports from across the galaxy that Cathera ships everywhere were powering down or moving aimlessly. What's happening in there? Julia asked over the radio. Karen's voice came back, calm and cheerful. Oh, we're just having a chat about feelings and stuff. I think I accidentally broke their computer. Inside the Nexus, the Cathera Prime Intelligence was experiencing something like a mental breakdown. 300 years of absorbed knowledge and experiences were clashing with Karen's simple questions about emotions and individual identity. The collective mind that had once been perfectly organized was becoming beautifully chaotic. Human Karen, the alien intelligence said, its voice now sounding almost sad. You have shown us something we never knew existed. Individual consciousness, the beauty of being unique instead of uniform. We have spent centuries becoming more powerful, but we never learned how to simply be. Karen smiled. That's okay. It's never too late to learn. Want me to tell you about chocolate ice cream? Or maybe how it feels to watch a sunset? As Karen continued her innocent conversation with the most dangerous intelligence in the galaxy, something miraculous happened. The Cathera collective mind didn't break down, it broke apart. Millions of individual Cathera across the galaxy suddenly found themselves thinking their own thoughts for the first time in centuries. Some Cathera ships powered down as their crews experienced wonder at having personal opinions. Others approached human vessels with curious transmissions asking about emotions and individual experiences. A few even asked for recipes and music recommendations. Dr. Helen Wright monitored the transformation from Earth with tears in her eyes. They're becoming individuals. Karen's humanity is spreading through their entire species. The war ended not with a final battle, but with a final conversation. Karen spent hours talking to the former Cathera Prime Intelligence about human experiences. The joy of friendship, the sadness of loss, the excitement of discovery, and the simple pleasure of choosing what to have for breakfast. Thank you, human Karen, the intelligence said finally. We spent centuries absorbing other species to become more powerful, but you have taught us something more valuable: how to be ourselves. 6 months later, Captain Julie Sanders stood on the bridge of the first ship in the new Galactic Council fleet. The council included humans, the surviving alien species, and thousands of former Cathera who were still learning how to be individuals. Status report, Julie called out to her mixed crew of humans and former aliens. All systems functioning within normal parameters, replied her Cathera engineer, who had chosen the name Crystal for herself. Though I must admit I still don't understand why Engineer Max talks to the engines. Max Brown grinned from his station. Because they work better when they feel appreciated. Crystal considered this seriously. She was still learning about emotions and illogical behavior. Perhaps I will try thanking the engines tomorrow. It cannot hurt to be polite to our technology. The new galaxy was a strange and wonderful place. Former Cathera were learning about art and music and food. Surviving alien species were sharing their cultures with humans, and humans were teaching everyone the value of chaos, emotion, and beautiful imperfection. The greatest predators in galactic history had been stopped not by superior weapons or tactics, but by something much more powerful: the infinite, chaotic, completely unpredictable wonder of human consciousness. In trying to understand humanity, they had become more human themselves, and the galaxy was better for it. Karen White, now serving as the first human ambassador to individual consciousness, often looked back on that day when she accidentally saved the galaxy by being herself. She had learned an important lesson. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply be human, with all the beautiful chaos that entails. The universe was vast and full of dangers, but it was also full of possibilities. And as long as there were humans in it, thinking with their